do you think of when you hear the word phonics? Do you think of the phrase sound it out? If so, you're not alone. But the truth is, there is much more to learning to unlock the code of written language than you may think. An understanding of the development of phonics and other decoding skills is essential to be an effective teacher of reading. Let's read this paragraph together. The Mad Hatter in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is a well-known literary character. What is not so well known is that there were lots of Mad Hatters in England before the invention of a felt-making machine in 1846. A popular fabric for hats, felt is made of wool fibers or animal hair matted together. Mercuric nitrate was used in the process, and long-time exposure to this caused hat makers to have twitching muscles, a lurching gait, incoherent speech, and confused minds. In these days, people considered them insane or mad. Thus, the phrase mad as a hatter entered the language. What's the matter? Did you have trouble reading this? How did you feel when you were trying to read this passage? Did you feel like a struggling reader? Did you catch on that the words were written backwards and with no punctuation? Did you feel somewhat victorious for breaking the code? For some students, the words they try to read are just as foreign as the ones you just read. But once they learn the pattern of the letter-sound relationships, they start to figure out the words and can comprehend the meaning of the text. Approximately 60% of students will learn to read no matter what type of instruction they receive. They may come from literacy-rich environments and have a head start on some other students, or language skills may just come easily to them. However, learning to read is a challenge for about 40% of students. About half of this 40% will learn to read proficiently with effective instruction, but the remaining 20% will continue to struggle even after receiving instruction in a core reading program that is effective for most students. The term alphabetic principle sometimes means different things to different people. For our purposes, we will define the alphabetic principle as the understanding that there are systematic and predictable relationships between written letters and spoken words. Generally, the alphabetic principle consists of phonemic awareness and phonics. Remember phonemic awareness? Here's a quick review. Remember, phonemic awareness is the student's awareness of the smallest units of sound in a word. Those smallest units of sound are called phonemes. The second component is phonics. Phonics and decoding are often used interchangeably. When we talk about phonics, we're talking about the ability to apply your knowledge of letter-sound relationships, including knowledge of letter patterns, to correctly pronounce written words. Here's what we know about effective phonics instruction from the National Reading Panel. Systematic and explicit phonics instruction is more effective than non-systematic or no phonics instruction. Systematic and explicit phonics instruction should begin in kindergarten. It's effective for all children, but is particularly beneficial for children who are having difficulty learning how to read. And remember, phonics instruction is not an entire reading program for beginning readers. Most teachers are acquainted with several approaches to phonics instruction. The distinctions between approaches are not absolute, and some programs of instruction combine approaches. This slide represents 3 of the major types you are likely to see. Systematic and explicit phonics is when the letter-sound relationships are taught in a clearly defined sequence. Your book provides some examples of this and specific programs that are written in a systematic and explicit way. Other programs you may be familiar with are Project Read and Reading Mastery. Analytic phonics is when you start with the whole word unit and then you break the word apart and link specific letters with their respective sounds. The difference between analytic phonics and systematic phonics is the sequence of instruction. In systematic phonics, you go from the part to the whole. In analytic phonics, you start with the whole word and move to the individual parts. Remember, analytic phonics has not been proven to be as effective as systematic and explicit phonics. Embedded phonics is teaching phonics skills by embedding phonics instructions within text reading. For example, if you're teaching the story or using the story, The Cat in the Hat, you might stop and talk about the short A sound or perhaps the rhyme at the end of the word and teach a word family. Systematic phonics is usually kind of a hit or miss. Embedded phonics, is usually more of a hit or miss approach, and there is no evidence that embedded phonics is effective in improving reading skills. Basic phonics instruction is usually associated with the sounded out reading strategy. At the very basic level, it involves learning the sounds, or phonemes, associated with the different letters, also called graphemes. As students start to learn letter sounds, then they learn how to blend these sounds together to make words. For example, if you are teaching about the sound of the letter M in a systematic and explicit way, you would show the letter, the grapheme, and then you would explicitly state, this is the letter M. The sound of this letter is M. Tell me the sound of this letter. And students would repeat that. Eventually, you would start to combine sounds together to make words. For instance, if you have the letters M-A-P written on the board, you might touch underneath each letter as the students sound it out, and then run your finger under the word as students say it quickly. It might sound like this. Let's touch the letters and tell me the sounds. M, A, P. Good, now say it fast. Map. If you don't know much about the vocabulary associated with phonics, you might benefit from a specific training session, such as Project Read. Or you could do a book that is designed for self-programmed instruction, such as this one by Barbara Fox, entitled Phonics Instructional Analysis for the Teacher of Reading, Programmed for Self-Instruction. Here is a graphic that is available from the 95% group. This looks at a phonics continuum, or what phonics instruction might look like, starting with the very simple phonics lessons and moving to a more complex phonics lesson. This happens to have the pink with grade 1, the green with grade 2, the blue with grade 3. There's no hard and fast rule about that, but it is generally agreed upon that consonant, vowel consonant words would be on the easiest level, whereas moving to multisyllabic words would then be a much harder task. You can find a lot of things at the 95% group's website that support the idea of systematic and explicit phonics instruction. In summary, systematic and explicit phonics instruction is the way to go. Systematic means it's planned and follows a logically progressive sequence. Explicit means that you directly and clearly state what is being taught, you model how it is being used by a skilled reader, and then you scaffold and guide students as they perform the same task until they are able to do it independently. Phonics instruction should start early as kindergarten. Basic phonics instruction should be completed by 3rd grade. And remember, phonics instruction is only one component of an effective reading program.